We are part of the Fired Up Sports Network of shows. Please check out other Fired Up Sports Network podcasts like the P-Lot Pod, Water Cooler Talk, Bell Smashers, Philly Sports Love and Pain, Drunk on Broad, Beer Battered Sports, and the Fired Up Sports Show, which are available on all major podcasting hosting sites and social media. Also, check out Mark Ramos' Roundup on firedupsports.com, which breaks down the happenings going on with all your favorite local teams.
Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions.
E-A-G-L-E-S Eagles!
Swing of the miss, struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Flyers are going to win the Stanley Cup. The Flyers win the Stanley Cup for the lead. Yes! Iverson, wow, what a fake off Daniels as he broke his ankles and got all the way to the cup.
Well, good morning. I guess this is the shoot around, the morning shoot around.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Let's call it the
I
shooter.
don't know. Listen, we'll be getting shots up today because, listen, the last time we talked, we weren't sure what direction they were going in terms of there was a lot of, obviously this offseason, a lot of cap flexibility. Not a lot of guys under contract being able to, really create a really good roster around the young nucleus of this team and, Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. And Daryl Morey is putting on quite a show here in terms of the creativity, the flexibility, the drive to really want to build this thing the best way possible. And, the best move, I think, is a move that the Sixers didn't make. It's a move that the Pistons made in taking Tobias Harris and giving him $52 million. Good Lord, Mark, just at a macro level, at a glance, what are your thoughts on the way that they've started this offseason?
Yeah, talking to some like buddies of mine that I talk about, like in our group texts and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
The only conclusion I could come to for the Sixers and Daryl Morey this offseason, I was just like A+. He gets an A for this offseason. To make the Paul George thing happen was really important because it sounded like the fourth year was a big sticking point for teams. I don't think the Clippers wanted to go an extra year. The Sixers are kind of looking at it like, well, our window is our window. So, if we can get production at a, Paul PG level production from him for at least 2 years of that, then it's a good investment. And then, I thought too, I thought that there was an opportunity. I thought for sure that first round pick was gone. But then they decide they settle in on McCain with that. They zero in on McCain with that pick. And I love that pick. I love the pick from the fit. I think he'll be a really I think he'll be at least a rotational piece for this club this year at 19. I think he'll play a little bit. So, and then, news comes down yesterday with the I think it was Cody Martin, right? Or was it Caleb?
Caleb
Martin. Okay. Caleb Martin joins the team. And, I love that fit. They really, really we've said on this show many times, I think, about they got to do something about this wing depth. They got to do something about addressing the wings. And between Martin and, bringing back Kelly and signing PG and all, I feel a lot better about that now. I feel a lot better about their ability to kind of have they have options on, at the 3 that they didn't have before. And I'm really happy about that.
I agree. Like the way that they've approached this offseason, they really saw Paul George as it. That was and I like it from a standpoint of the fact that it feels like they went into this offseason feeling like that's the only move. We're going to do whatever we got to do to make that move happen. And I think going the extra year, right? Like your window with Embiid is now, and your window with Embiid and Maxey is like right now. So surround him with the best possible group. I think that they knew going into this offseason, they knew that was that was the only way to approach this offseason.
Right.
And when you look at how the Clippers decided to handle it, right, they were hesitant on going the extra year, whatever. The whole sign and trade. I know there was some stuff came out about his desire to potentially maybe go to Golden State in a sign and trade with the LA and to stay out west. For whatever reason, that didn't materialize. And then it basically at some point came down to you and Orlando. And when you look at, the group in Philly and Orlando, if your goal is to be in contention in the East, your better shot is with the Sixers, and your better shot is with a group. Now, listen, there's some young, talented kids in Orlando, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At the same time, the level of talent and your ability to be able to get into a position to contend, and right now, right, you're contending with the Knicks and the Celtics. At worst case scenario, you're replacing Tobias Harris with Paul George.
Yeah.
That right there, on the surface, immediately makes you better.
Yeah,
because the caliber of player is different between Tobias Harris and Paul George. You're getting a much more elite level athlete with Paul George than you ever were going to get. And at the very least, and I know there's the playoff PP stuff. Like I know that stuff's all there.
Yeah, sure.
But you know that you're not going to get a guy that's going to disappear.
Yeah.
And there were way too many times in Tobias Harris's run with the Sixers where he just evaporated, right?
Mm-hmm.
Case in point, elimination game against the Knicks, and he scores 0 points.
Yeah. Yeah. To look at the Harris thing and to for him to end up in Detroit and to see what he got, it's funny because the league-wide perception of players is so vastly different than the rest of us think. Whether it's fans, media alike, we kind of all have different views of players, and then there's that small circle in the league that thinks differently. Mm-hmm. This guy keeps just getting paid and then gets paid and then gets paid. I don't.
I heard this. Mark, you ready for this? In his NBA career, that dude is going to collect over $300 million.
That's insane.
What did I do wrong in my life that and you're talking about a guy who is not a great NBA player. He's an average, he's a professional NBA player, right? Yeah. He's not horrible. He's not great. But in his career, he has, in his last 2 contracts, maximized the position.
Mm-hmm.
The Sixers were in a position where they had the money. They had to spend it. He was there. He said, look, guys, I'm here. I'll take your money. And then he goes to Detroit, where he sees a team that has to get to a cap ceiling. So they have to spend the money in order to not get penalized for not spending enough money.
Yeah.
And now he's going to go back to Detroit, and he's going to collect a bag of cash, and it just kind of is what it is. But to kind of speak to something that we're talking about, I'm going to look at his playoff. This is courtesy of Dunkadelphia, which is a great account to follow.
They are.
Yeah. This is Caleb Martin playoffs in 2024 versus Tobias Harris in 2024.
Yeah.
I'm just going to let the stats speak for themselves, right? You're talking about he averaged more points, less rebounds, the same assists, field goal percentage is better, 3-point percentage is 10 percentage points better.
Yeah.
And you're talking about Caleb Martin, like
Yeah.
not Kevin Durant, not Steph Curry, not Devin Booker. No, you're talking about Caleb Martin,
Yeah.
who is going to be a really important piece for this franchise moving forward.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
terms of the role that he's going to play. But wow.
Yeah. That's like the last sentence there. That's what the thing was always with Harris. That was always the thing with him, was just simply, the player is what he is, but
Mm-hmm.
it's the contract that really cripples you. And, that professional sports is a business, and that's what it is, like, and fans will have an emotional response to those things when it feels like this player isn't fulfilling that, and they're not fulfilling that role, and they're getting paid like, in this upper echelon of talent, and they're just simply not performing like that. It's, it sucks, it sucks.
Yeah.
It was a long deal. It felt like it was twice as long as it actually was, with him
Right.
here. And then, to watch how other things had transpired, right, with the
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy Butler thing and stuff like that. I mean, it just kind of it compounded everything to make it feel a lot worse. And then,
Yeah.
for the playoffs to roll around and to kind of no show, was really, that'll be his legacy here. I think
Yeah.
that'll be his legacy here. And
His
you know,
legacy is essentially Casper the Friendly Ghost.
yeah, yeah,
Right. He
and
was great. He was good in the community. He was a great guy.
yeah,
You
sure,
didn't hate him. But we've said this on all of our shows across all of the sports. You want this fan base to love you, show us the same kind of passion that we would show for the team.
right, right.
If you do that, you don't have to be a great player, right? We don't have to go through the laundry list of like last guy on the bench, Corey Brewer, like you just have to put in a little bit of effort and show us that you have the same kind of passion, and we're good.
Yeah.
But disappear in a playoff elimination game.
Mhm.
Sorry, like
Yeah.
I can't. Like we can't forgive you on
Yeah.
that one. So let's move on to bigger and brighter things.
Sure.
Paul George, the addition of Paul George to this roster. Talk to me about what you see in terms of what he will bring as a scorer alongside Embiid and Maxey.
Yeah, I think that from a fit perspective, I've been on this show, like when we've done these shows in the past, I was very kind of, when his name had come up this summer, I was like, I just don't know if I see it. But it really wasn't about the fit at all. It was like I can see the basketball fit there, and
Yeah.
how seamless that is, And I think PG's coming here understanding that this is, that he is that player. He is the third guy
Mhm.
to this group. To Matt, he's here to augment Joel and Maxi. And
Right.
I think, like, when I look at the fit, I mean, I love the fit as far as like, PG's one of these guys. He can switch and guard multiple positions, score. The health is the big thing. But we're all,
Mhm.
we're already worrying about that. So you know, what's one more? Uh, so I think, like, I love the basketball fit here for the fact that, in the postseason, like you mentioned it earlier, the Knicks and the Celtics, and I think this signing puts the Sixers, and then with the other additions, it really puts the Sixers in that conversation of, like, if the Knicks and the Celtics are kind of seen as the teams in the East, the Sixers are kind of in that mix too, and I like how they match up against these teams.
Right.
Uh, and it's been a long time since we've had that little, Northeast, New York, Boston, Philadelphia, uh, you know, all three
Well,
teams
look,
are competitive, and
I think it'll be good for the East. I think
yeah.
the fact that all three teams are good all at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
um, and for the simple fact that throughout the course of the season, Embiid is not going to play 82 games.
Mm-hmm.
That you have a guy that on the nights when Embiid is not going to play, that you feel comfortable enough that with him and Maxey playing together, that you have enough of the core around them
Yeah.
to be able to handle maybe a stretch. Because let's be honest, last season in that one stretch after Embiid gets hurt in Golden State, where they looked like they might have been like a not playoff team type of caliber play. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
bad.
Yeah.
And the drop off, it seemed like everybody dropped off after Embiid dropped off, right?
Yeah.
But like, you know, I think from a basketball fit, I love it. I love where this team is going to be with that player, and it's almost like that's the player that I thought you needed, obviously, a couple years ago.
Right.
And it didn't happen for whatever reason. Um, and I like the fact that they were able to make that move and not have to go through another route where it required multiple other assets that you had to give up.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so the other move that drops later, right? The I shouldn't say the other move because there's a couple moves, but like the Maxi extension, wrapping this guy up early, getting him under contract, being able to get him to secure. Talk about and the irony in all this, right, is the day that the Maxi signs his extension is on Mike Muscala's birthday. And the only reason Tyrese Maxey is a Sixer is because in the bubble, the Mike
Yeah.
Muscala hits the 2 threes to be able to secure the transfer of the pick from Oklahoma City to the Sixers. So they pick him, and the whole bubble thing happens, and he does that. They don't have a tournament that year, so he's not. So his slides a little bit, but
Right.
all of that coming together. Talk to me about wrapping him up.
Yeah. I think why wait? Tyrese's his game is like, this is where all-star this year, great season from Tyrese in general. And I love too, like, for anybody, whether it's Tyrese or even like Jarrett McCain, who's coming in here. I think for these younger guys on the roster, it's a really, really great thing that, to be like a perennial playoff team, because I really do think that experience in the postseason matters. Like, the game is different. It slows down. There's kind of like a different feeling to it, the way you have to approach it. The half court offenses seem to matter a lot more in the postseason and stuff. And
Right.
I think the more experience you get, playing in that atmosphere, down the road, the more comfortable you are. Kind of like if you're a higher echelon player, that you're able to like take over a game because kind of
Right.
what it takes and things like that.
And you saw glimpses of that.
Yeah, like in Tyrese's game, I mean, we've seen him be already in his career. We've seen him some nights be unguardable.
Right.
Uh, I don't think anybody off the dribble getting to the rim nobody is as quick as in the league as Tyrese is off the dribble to get to he blows past guys, especially in the regular season, to get to the rim.
Right.
Like, just to this day, people seem very, very surprised at his speed and his ability to get off, to fly and to get to the rim so quickly. So,
I mean, it is, and just to take a look at the graphic, right?
Yeah.
What's on the screen right now, right? You saw the Franz Wagner got the rookie extension too.
Yep.
And his contract, and for whatever reason, not sure what the numbers play out, but he's going to make $65 million more than Tyrese Maxey during the duration of the contract.
Yeah.
Right. But then you look at the number comparison, right? Maxey's averaging 26. Wagner's averaging just a shade under 20, right? So 6 points more per game, more assists, 2 less rebounds, right? But the numbers comparable, but like the impact, when I look at that and I look at the impact that he provides on the court, right? And this is obviously part of Orlando trying to secure their young nucleus. But from everything that I've learned in this offseason, this offseason showed me that this, and it's not something that I didn't already know, but it just kind of reiterated it. If you want to be in contention for a championship, that is not done with young guys. That is done with guys that have been around the block, that have been in those situations, that have been and had those experiences, right? You look at the rest of the offseason, right? You bring back Kelly Oubre on a team-friendly deal. You bring in Eric Gordon for the vet minimum. You sign Andre Drummond, who was and now is back, but is the best guy. And let's not get this twisted. Andre Drummond is a starting center in this league.
Yeah.
And he took less money to come play here with Joel Embiid. You see Caleb Martin take a lot less money than he was offered for the deal that was in Miami. Those vet guys, and there's gonna be a couple of other guys I wanna kind of throw by you that are guys that came off the board a little bit in the last 24 hours. That might be guys that they might think about bringing in. I like where they built this nucleus. It's just really impressive to see how creative they were and see what they were able to bring in.
Yeah. I agree. This was a really good job by Morey this offseason. The Paul, like, to get the Paul George thing done, which was like obviously the big piece of it, but also to retain some guys like Kelly. Eric Gordon's been in the league forever. You know what I mean? He's been on a lot of good teams. Daryl has he knows him and Gordon have a connection from their Houston days. And yeah, I mean, like Drummond, like you were saying about being a starter. I mean, I think he's been for a long time, even before his first tour of duty with the Sixers. He's a player that very easily is he can go for a double-double very easily. And I know a double-double isn't what it used to be, but those guys, those guys in the league still have their place,
Absolutely.
And so them bringing him in, I mean, like that on a 2-year deal, so you have like the protection of, having him this year and a year after. Yeah, I mean, and then this, I think you're right. Like when it comes to competing, you have to have a little bit of an older team. And, I think that this is to look at where they were a year ago and to look at how they've utilized this cap space over this summer. I mean, this is as good as they could have done. And it's not over yet too, like they still have opportunities to bring some guys in on vet minimum contracts and things like that could help. So,
speaking of that, right? They end the Paul George, they end the Paul Reed experiment. That's done. And he's going to go on to play somewhere else probably. But that opens up some rosters. That opens up some cap flexibility and some roster spots. So I'm going to give you a couple names of guys that just in the last couple of days. So Davis Bertans, process guy himself, Landry Shamet, right? Yeah. Those are, and there was another guy, I'm trying to think. Well, while I'm looking, talk to me about those two guys, because those two guys are guys that could provide some. They could provide some roster depth on the wings.
Yeah, Bertans is interesting, just for the fact that I don't know what his shooting percentage looks like these days, like, or his 3 percentage looks like these days. But I mean, he's always been, uh, he's one of those guys I think that can really like knock down difficult shots. And uh, that's another thing too. Like with the Caleb Martin signing is like, in addition to the experience and all those other things, he can actually like he'll hit it like he can hit threes. And um that's kind of how I think of Bertans. Obviously not as good or athletic as Martin, but um I'd have some interest there, I think, in Davis Bertans, just because he can. Um, you need guys. I feel like you need guys like that, especially if we're looking postseason, and it's good to have guys that have a quality of like they can knock down shots. Difficult, It's one thing to knock down an open look, but it's another one when
Yeah.
you have a hand in your face and things like that, and you know, uh, I think that's a skill, that guys kind of develop over time. And I remember when Bertans was in Washington and he had some moments, and a couple years ago when the Sixers ran into the Wizards in round one, he had some moments where he was knocking down shots. He got real hot, I think,
Right.
in that playoff series. So yeah, he'd be interesting. I'd have some interest there.
I mean, listen, you're talking about at this point, you're talking about wing depth off the bench. Like you're not talking about a guy who you need to come in and start. But we've seen, I think that based on the way that you've built this roster to this point, fill in the rest of the roster with guys that can shoot. Fill in the rest of the roster with guys that can come off the bench, give you, I mean, you're talking what, 12, 13 minutes during the regular season?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not talking about guys that are coming in and start and playing meaningful minutes. Like the other guy that I was that kind of caught my eye is another guy who's been here before. Is Markelle Fultz.
Yeah.
Like Markelle Fultz, his career, I won't say it. How do I put this politely? It's blossomed, right?
Yeah.
It's grown. You see that his opportunities that he got to play, to have the ball in his hands in Orlando, is not. I think they thought they were, when they drafted him, they thought they were getting what we're getting from Maxey right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe a guy that could come off the bench that could give you maybe a light beer version of Tyrese Maxey. Obviously not going to give you the offensive explosion production, but could come in and be serviceable. And then there was there was some the thing that caught my eye was there was a quote from that came out from Joel Embiid. It said, "When we did trade him, I was disappointed because I felt like we had given up on him too early. Even back then, without a jump shot, I still thought he was an amazing talent just because he was so quick. I know he's a great playmaker."
Yeah.
So that kind of caught my eye because I'm like, if he's talking about him and maybe that's a conversation that they're having, behind closed doors. But I'm curious. I'm curious to see how the back end of this roster plays out, because it could, you're seeing a lot of creativity and a lot of flexibility from Daryl Morey.
Yeah. The Fultz thing's interesting. I've seen people banning about his name too. And I agree with that. Like that assessment that was from Joel, right? You said?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really, really good assessment, I think, of Markelle.
Mm-hmm.
And he was, too, if you remember back during the draft when he was coming in at the draft, like he was a late bloomer at like the high school varsity level as well. Like, it took him a while to kind of like, I think too, it's like when you look at like the physical tools, you're like, man, this guy's got elite tools, like physical tools. And you can't teach that. But at the same time, they have to be refined and polished, and you have to figure out what you can do at the next level and what you can't do. And to watch him have success other places was I was always I was kind of happy for him. It kind of I don't know what I don't know if it was just simply too much too soon for him here or what the case was, but he has settled in as a pretty reputable like NBA caliber player, and I think aside from like a previous connection, he would actually be somebody that could actually give them something at this point. They would be nice to have, as you said, in
Yeah.
those non-maxi minutes to kind of get something that kind of somewhat resembles that. That would be a nice addition, I think.
Yeah, I think there's a vet spot coming up that I think it could be earmarked for Kyle Lowry. It could be. I still think you've got some space to fill out this roster. I'm just curious to see how it plays out.
Yes.
The last guy I want to talk about a little bit is the kid that we talked about the percentage that they were going to pick somebody in the draft was pretty low considering what we had seen. We had thought that like the plan would be to trade that pick for a vet guy to bring in. But they draft Jared McCain, right? And they draft Jared McCain with Dalton Connect on the board right now. That to me, when I saw him slipping, that to me seemed like maybe it would have been more of a fit, right? He's a little bit older, a little bit more polished, is taller, bigger, longer, more athletic. But Jared McCain can shoot. And I think, and that is something you can't teach. I know he's a little bit undersized, right? He's in the 6'2" kind of range, I believe. But from an athletic standpoint, I don't hate it.
No, I'm really I'm a really big fan of the pick. Once they made the selection and I realized, obviously they weren't trading it in any kind of deal. I was like, okay, I like that. I kind of like this. Like I think that was my immediate feeling of, he's another one. He's got like loads of like, there's a lot of things Jarrett can do.
Right.
He has I think from my knowledge, he has a 3-and-D kind of thing to his game a little bit. There's I know that when he was in Duke, his kind of penchant, I think, for just throwing up shots was kind of something that got him in trouble at times in Duke. But those are things that you learn as you spend time in the game. And
I think you're also talking about a kid who's 19.
Yeah, he's 19.
Talking about a kid who's young. But I think when they project, right, Dalton Connect is 23, right? So he's obviously 4 years, right? He's older, stronger, right? More experience. But I think what they might be looking at is the projection, right? Can Jared McCain be better at 23 than Dalton Connect is going to be right now?
Right.
And when they project that out, right, and the only conversation, right, just in just going back and forth with text with friends, like when I look at the window, right, if the window is to win now,
right,
that maybe the Dalton Connect pick might have been more impactful in the short term, versus the athleticism that you might get, and I'm curious to see what Jared McCain's role is in all of this.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I could see feeling that way about Connect being like a better fit today, like in terms of like just playing. But there's something to like as I kind of dived into like the Jarrett McCain kind of intel and scouting reports and tape and things like that to kind of read up on who they got here. I mean, like even at 19, and I understand the NCAA level is a different thing, but I really liked his kind of commitment to like this is a kid that's like a willing rebounder, He's not afraid of physical contact, and and I love sometimes you see that, and I think I'm really intrigued to see how he fits in the lineup, because I do think he's going to play some, and I kind of like the idea of you have a lot of young players that come in the league, especially around at his age, and they're shy. They're shy in terms of physicality. I don't think McCain has that. I think he was a fit physicality wise. At the college level, he was somebody who was not. He never backed away from contact and things like that. So I wonder if we'll see him attack in the same kind of way at the NBA level, and then even if he's just a part of the rotation, I think
True.
he may not be getting much postseason time, but in the regular season, I think he could definitely help them. And then as a fallback plan, not to go on and on here about Jarrett, but I think as kind of a fallback plan, you know, if this just were to if the wheels were just to fall off it, God forbid, I think it's nice to know that you have a good young player in Maxey locked up, all-star caliber player, and you have Jarrett McCain.
Yeah.
And
you got two young athletic guards.
Yeah, and you can kind of build out from that and kind of flip it to where maybe you're not ready for prime time, but you have enough talent to kind of, keep you afloat, and the team just could fall into the ether,
So, yeah. But listen, we'll on the next couple episodes over the summer, we'll talk about all that.
Okay.
And
I didn't mean to jump the gun. Sorry.
No, not at all. No, listen, I think it's a really good discussion point to think about moving forward, to see you do have to maximize the immediate right now, which is that window with Embiid and Maxey together, and now with Paul George, and a combination of those three, and trying to use that as an avenue to bring a championship here. But I think it's also important to keep an eye on the future, right? It avoids that bottoming out into another process era where you just strip everything down and try to start over again.
Right. Right.
So I'm curious to see how the rest of this roster plays out. I'm curious to see what happens. You'll have an opportunity to see, some of these young guys play in the summer league in the next couple of weeks. You're going to see, I'm excited about the Olympics, especially the men's basketball team, seeing Embiid and the possibilities with, some of the lineups. They're going to be huge in terms of their physical stature. I saw, potential lineups with, Embiid, Durant, LeBron James, Anthony Davis.
Oh God.
Just looking at when you look at the one lineup someone had put out, I think the shortest guy was 6'9". And I'm going, God bless whoever else qualified for the end for this. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. But we'll be back later in the summer to check that out. We're gonna play a couple intro, outro things, and we'll be back on the other side talking all things Flyers. So stay with us for a little bit. We'll be back.
Iverson, wow, what a fake off Daniels as he broke his ankles and got all the way to the cup.
Oh, well, we're back. Look at that. Talking all things Flyers now on Drunk on the Ice. But Mark, it's been it was interesting to see to see their approach this offseason, to see how they're coming in. They're we'll go over the draft. I gotta tell you, I was very impressed to see the water cooler post draft late night uh late night breakdown was I was very impressed with the knowledge that dropped that morning. I was down the shore, didn't get to stay up late to watch the draft, but if you haven't had a chance to go check out that latest episode of the Water Cooler Talk with Mark breaking down all the posts, the midnight post draft breakdowns was it was pretty good, Mark.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, it was. I thought it would be good to just kind of have like that do the immediate reaction kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I appreciate you saying that. Because I was worried about that was kind of a different kind of thing I was experimenting with, just kind of throwing out kind of immediate thoughts, just kind of riffing and talking to listeners as if they were in the room there with me.
Absolutely.
So I kind of plan to do more of those. I think I've gotten good feedback about them, so I think I might do that in the future too.
No, those are good. I liked it. Listen, the big news that drops, right? Obviously, the news of Mitchkoff and it essentially becoming official, right? The contract with Ska is dissolved. He signs the contract, and now I think it's just at this point a matter of just going through the visa process to actually get him over here to but he's on the marquee. They got the jersey in the stores. Shout out to our boy Mike Giletto at on the I guess they would be the flagship show of the network,
Yeah.
the Fired Up Sports Show. But Mike took a leap with the number 39 Mitchkoff Flyers jersey a couple months ago, and it's didn't think he was going to have to be able to I thought he was going to have to knock the dust off of it a couple years from now, but he's going to be wearing that one down at the rink this year. So
yeah,
talk about the impact of this guy coming over this soon, this quickly, and maybe if there's a comp.
Yeah, I think I've number one. I mean, it's super exciting. This isn't hyperbole on my part, and you can hear it on other shows, other places as well. Like, this is the most celebrated prospect the Flyers have had since Eric Lindros. Like,
yeah, oh yeah,
like in terms of just like profiling as a star, almost immediately, and that I mean, like they haven't had that in a long, long time. They have found talent in other, later in drafts and things like that, but nothing quite to this degree. I think this year, like watching him step in to an NHL role, there's going to be an adjustment period, but the talent level is really, really great, and I think he's going to be a real. I mean, I've seen some prop bets and things like that, and people have him penciled in as like a favorite to win the Calder Trophy, which I think would actually. I'm pretty sure he would be the first Flyer to win Rookie of the Year ever.
Wow.
So, this is it's a pretty big deal, and I think for like to the like the comparables there, the first player I think of, not to keep it within the Russian lineage, but he really, really reminds me a lot of Nikita Kucherov from the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Okay, so that's the guy I've heard.
Yeah.
Everything that I've heard is the comp is Kucherov, which, listen, if you can get that and that level of production,
Yeah.
Man, talk about like you are talking about top 5 player in the league type talent.
Yeah. Yeah. The same, like he's very I think it's like play style. It's also like that kind of, which I think will be fun to watch here.
Mhm.
like that manipulating of space, that kind of like surgical approach, and then that quick strike attack, kind of like that you see
Right.
Kucherov. That's kind of Mitchkov kind of sees the ice a lot in the same way, um, where he thinks the game at a really, really elite level, and uh, in addition to his other physical tools, um, like that's where I think a lot of people's that have seen him play a lot more than I have, um,
Mm-hmm.
where they are with comparables, and yeah, that wouldn't you know that would be exciting. That wouldn't be something to yeah, but with we'll do all right with our own version of Kucherov. I think.
Yeah, listen, I love the idea that you've been clamoring for a guy like this for since Eric Lindros left. Like as much as the production that you got from Danny Briere, the 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 great guy that Claude Giroux was, they were always great players, but they weren't like top 5 in the league players.
Right.
So if the ceiling is a top 5 in the league, elite 50 goal, 60 goal scorer, sign me up. Like
Right.
the teams that passed on him because of what they didn't know, I feel like are going to have the potential to really kick themselves for a long time.
Hmm.
And you see how productive he was in the league that he was playing in Russia
Yeah.
with grown men, right?
Hmm.
As at the age that he is right now, playing with guys who are 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years older than him and still having the level of production that he did. I mean, it is a level up, right? The NHL is a level up from the KHL, but I
Sure.
don't think that you're going to see nearly the drop off that some people thought they might.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like production, I think his KHL production for players his age, I
Mm-hmm.
think we're kind of I think you're looking at some of the more elite level players that are now NHLers that came through the NHL. Like you're talking about guys like when you look at like points per game percentage and stuff
Mm-hmm.
for players at his age, you're looking at like guys like Panarin, Ovechkin, you know what I mean? Like some of the real like dominant great KHL, Russian born prospects that we've seen come to the North America and become stars here. So I think
Right.
that's kind of like the projection, and I you see a lot of people online and things like that. Like a lot of people talk about the you know, kind of, oh, bring it down a notch kind of thing in terms of like expectations or excitement. But, I would certainly never tell anybody not to be super excited about this kid because he'll be for a team that has, they've really struggled over the better part of the last decade. Like, this kid's worth the price of admission, I think, to buy a ticket this year and to watch play. So, and
Listen,
it's been a long
as
time.
someone who is a connoisseur of jerseys, and my wife's at work, so she's probably not listening.
Yeah.
This one's the next one to go in the cart.
Yep.
Because it's going to hang right next to the Lindros one. That I feel like that's the level of player that we're going to get, and it's the kind of thing where you just flip on the highlights for half a
Hmm.
second, right? And the Michigan goals are wild to see. The creativity, the way that he's able to operate in space, the speed,
Hmm.
um, it's just elite. It's really, really wild to see and to know that you got a guy like that, that has the potential to be like the one of the next future faces of the league, is really exciting.
Yeah.
I'm just I'm just really excited. I'm excited for him to be a part of this, be a part of this organization because
Yeah.
that after that goes on, right, we have the draft. So to take a look at the draft, the way that the draft played out, they stayed at 13. They tried really hard to get in that top 5. I know
Yep.
you talked about a little bit. Talk about that scenario in terms of their desire to get up into that. I know they had a Russian kid on their mind to be able to get and maybe pair with our guy,
Yeah.
and but that didn't materialize. So talk about that scenario real quick.
Yeah, they were. I mean, like all the rumors, even things that were reported after the draft. I mean, like the Flyers had really, it sounded like Danny Briere and all. They were really working the phones to get into the top 10 or top 5. And Ivan Demidov was, I think, the player that they were really, really trying to get. He ended up going to Montreal with the 5th overall pick, I believe. I think they were 5th.
Mm-hmm.
And 5th or 4th, one of those. And like I'm sure teams try every year, but it's funny because there's always smoke around. Oh, this team might trade their 5th overall pick every year, and it just as an example, using the 5th pick as an example, and it just never seems to materialize. I think often that's because it's just the value is so great
Right.
to pick in that spot. If you're trading it for how do you really assess the value of a pick of, even though you're looking at some really great, potentially elite young players, they haven't played a game in the NHL yet. So it's like, how do you
Right.
really assess it in terms of value? The pick always seems to be, especially in the top 10 and for sure in the top 5, those picks tend to always be far too valuable to the teams that are in those positions to end
Mm-hmm.
up trading them for,
Yeah.
whatever. So I think like the for the Flyers at 13, they make the trade, they move back one spot. Minnesota takes Steve Bouillon, the defenseman. The Flyers end up taking Jet Luchenko at 13, which was a surprise, I think. And I know that the more I think people have looked into him, the more the happier they are coming around on it.
Right.
But I mean, the pick's still kind of, I think the worry is that they left some high, higher floor guys rather, on the board in the defenseman Bouillon and Consta Helenius, the centerman from Finland. There's a lot to like about Luchenko, though.
Yeah, I think everything that I read was that this pick seemed to be more for position than it did for like the best player available.
Right.
And I think when you're in a rebuilding phase, I think you just take best player available all the time and just
Yes.
kind of build the base. What are your initial thoughts on what he could potentially bring in the timeline? Because he signs the entry level contract. What do you look for in terms of production and timeline?
I think he's one of the younger players. He might be the youngest player in this draft, if I remember correctly. Luchenko is on the younger side. Excuse me. On this in this draft, and I think listening to the Flyers' assistant general manager Brett Flair after the draft, and then listening to the things that Briere said, I mean, like this seems like a 4-year kind of plan. Like he's going to play out his junior career. They're going to have him go to the AHL and then eventually make the leap to the NHL. That would be kind of like my assessment of it. And in terms of like production, I think you're looking at like a really good second line guy.
Okay.
But I mean, once again, there's nothing. You need players like that too, and that's a good player in the NHL. Luchenko has good versatility. I think he's a natural center, but I think he plays He can pop out to wing too. He had a really productive year for the Guelph Storm last year, who his junior team was not a very good team. So he was like one of the he was pretty much the guy producing a lot of the offense for them. And I think I disagree with the overall philosophy that they were looking at with this pick. Like, as you said, I think in a team in their situation that they look more, you look at the best player available. And I know that that varies on people's boards, but I think Hellenis has a lot more. I think he's a higher upside player. And, so I, I don't, I like Lutsenko. I don't, I'm going to root for him, and I hope he fulfills all of his potential with the Flyers. But, I think that it has there's some potential there to look back on that one and say, yeah, we got a serviceable player, but this guy behind them or this guy in front of him, they became stars. So
I think you're kind of you're spot on with that in terms of like what I thought. Like, there's a couple of guys that they picked after that got picked after that I'm going to keep my eye on.
yeah,
I'd like to see how their careers play out. But like the next two picks in the second round at 51 and 59, they take guys with size at the very least on the surface, right? You take Berglund and Gill, and they're both 6'4",
big boys.
Big boys, right? Berglund is a guy who's played in the Swedish Junior League, right? But is 6'4", 210. And then you take Spencer Gill, who is 6'4" and 185.
Yeah.
So you take
I thought, and I may have put this on Twitter, I thought the Flyers did really well on day 2. I'd like a lot of their additions in day 2. Berglund and Gill, like as you said, Don, big players. Berglund's intriguing to me. I think like there's a little bit of projection there, much like there is with the Lutsenko thing. I don't mind taking a swing like that in the second round versus, within the top 15. But I'm interested to see where he fits in down the road here. He's a big player. I think he has some skills that I could see would be valuable to the Flyers and what they would like about a player like that, especially if he fills out and he learns how to use that size. He could be a really tough player to play against. And then, Spencer Gill, I think, there's a little bit of like, it's a little bit of a project that way, I think. But I love what I've read about him. I've never seen the kid play, but everything that I've read about Gill, big guy, right-handed, could be a little, there could be a little bit of untapped offensive ability there, but he can really move the puck, and that's a key, like, that's non-negotiable, I think, in today's NHL for a defenseman. You got to be able to make past the puck, and you can't just be a big lumbering stay-at-home guy that doesn't have good puck skills. You got to have certain level of puck skills, and players like that seem to, they tend to play a long time, I think, in the league. If they make it, they play a long time and are serviceable. So I don't mind those picks.
No, I think you're going to need, like, in the course of this build, you're going to need guys to fill those roles. So I like the idea. Any of the other guys like jump off the table? Because they're like the last pick at 205 is another guy that's huge, right? Like 6'4", 195. Austin Moline, who is a right shot defense, like is a guy that, like, again, if you're trying to build the blue line, right? You saw Florida and the way that they built that blue line to build the back end with size.
Yeah.
Take a swing on a young guy.
Yeah. Moline was interesting with a 7th rounder. I think, like, if you can, for a 7th rounder, I think if you get any games at the pro level, that's an accomplishment, considering, you're so far down the list. But, some other names on here, I'm very, very excited for Noah Powell. His number one, his story is amazing. And he's also I there seems to be some requisite some base level skill that looks like a pro player.
Okay.
His story is incredible. Last year he was draft eligible, wasn't selected, so he was he was an overage this year. He goes back to his USHL team. He leads the league in goals. He's also he's partially deaf,
Ooh.
and which it's pretty amazing that he's even playing a sport like hockey at a high level like that, having like an obstacle to deal with like that. He's committed to Ohio State University, so he's a
Okay.
player I'm going to keep my eye on in the NCAA level and all. He kind of plays like a
Yes.
power forward kind of game, so
I
net
like it.
front presence guy. So I'm excited for about Noah Powell. He seems like an intriguing prospect. So
Yeah.
uh,
Listen, on the overall, I think I'm not blown away, but I'm also not disappointed either
right,
about this draft class in particular.
hmm
I think that you know, the assessment that you shared a little bit ago, the picks that are later on, I like a lot more than the pick in the first round
hmm
because of potentially what you could have gotten and what you may have left in later picks.
yeah,
But on the overall, I like the approach in terms of the build. It's a blend of size and speed and skill, which when this thing starts to turn in 2, 3, 4 years, those are the guys that you're going to want to bring that are going to hopefully in a veteran laden team be
yeah,
guys that play on your third or fourth line.
yeah, for sure. I look at like a player like Ilya Plotov from uh, he was a Russian prospect they took late in this draft, and I read a little bit about him uh, recently, and everything that I see is like this
Mhm.
is a kid. He's really small, but he's got really good skill, and I think you know skating I think may need some work as well, but I don't mind like taking a dart throw like that late on, like take a gamble on some skill,
Right.
and who knows what might come of that, and just kind of let his game kind of evolve over there in Russia, and then if the Flyers have already developed that, they've built that bridge between themselves
Mhm.
and Russian the KHL and the Russian players and Russian teams, and and maybe you're able to bring him over, and if he plays for you, as a sixth rounder, that would be great.
Right.
So
Now listen, I like it. And then after the draft, right, on July 1st, right, they re-signed Eric Johnson. They bring
mhm,
back Garrett Hathaway, um, bring back Bobby Brink. Like you're making moves for guys. I like
mhm.
right. You're going to need guys like that on your roster. You're going to need to fill out the roster on some level. Talk to me about the idea of bringing those guys back.
Yeah, Eric Johnson will probably be their seventh D, I would imagine. He'll play a little bit. He spoke very highly though last season, I believe. They traded for him at the deadline, and it's just like defensive depth and things like that. And he really spoke highly about playing in Philadelphia. He really seemed to love playing for the Flyers. So I, he'll play a little bit, but if there's a young player that ends up taking his spot, that kind of ends up that's what happens. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind it as like an extra D, and a guy that might you can plug in every now and again to play a couple games here or there. He seems to be really good veteran leader type of player. The young guys seem to like and respect him, so I do think that counts for something, in a rebuild. Um, Garnet Hathaway coming back, I think was um, I don't think the Flyers had to do that. I think he had a year left on his deal, so they extended him, I think, as soon as they possibly could. And I don't mind that at all. Hathaway was a good soldier for this team. He kind of
Mm-hmm.
he brings that like signature Flyers grit in physicality, but he can actually play a little bit. He's
Right.
like a useful player. And so I don't have any issues with that. And Brink coming back, Bobby Brink's going to be an interesting player to keep our eye on. I think he's a player that has some skill, but hasn't always been able to show it. He's had trouble staying in the lineup. And he's a right winger, and the Flyers have like a ton of wings. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see where he fits. But him coming back and them giving him the extra year, I think would suggest that they think he's gonna be a part of the plan in some capacity. But he's gonna have to, he doesn't have like a spot penciled in for him either in camp. He's gonna have to come in and actually win a spot, I think.
I like it. I mean, I think you got to see, in addition to, having those veteran guys, right? I think you also got to see, they had all the young guys in the development camp.
Mm-hmm.
Anything to glean from the guy, right? You brought in guys that you had drafted, right? You brought in guys that are in your system, but maybe playing somewhere else, but you get a chance to see them all kind of play together.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really surprised that this was not more readily available.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure people would have liked to see. You may not have packed a house, but I think you could have put it online.
Yeah.
You could have made it in a more readily. I think they're because of some of the young guys that they have brought in. I think you would have gotten a decent audience to be able to see at least the development game and the camp and the scrimmage.
The scrimmages.
But anything to glean from the guys that were in for the development camp before we jump out?
Yeah, a few years ago I actually went to I went to a developmental camp day with one of my buddies, and that was the first time I'd ever gone. I wish I would have been able to go this week. It's a fun kind of like to see them, go through the drills and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course, Saturday night they do the big scrimmage, and people tend to come out for that. But I think from everything that I was able to gather from people that were there, it sounded like Lutsenko had a really good camp, which was positive, knowing that, he was able to come in and kind of impress people with some of the things that maybe we weren't sure about. It's a rookie camp. It's a summer camp. So it's kind of like, you want to be careful about projections and things like that. And,
Right.
but that seemed pretty, that was positive. I was happy to hear that, Lutsenko, people were impressed with what they saw in camp. So maybe as we get more exposed to him, it'll win us over. Those of us who are a little bit skeptical.
Yeah, I mean, I heard a lot of the same stuff, right? The feedback on Lutsenko was all positive. Which, listen, we're in the way early stages of development,
very
in terms of. So the fact that it's positive, and the fact that you saw glimpses of what they thought they were getting when they drafted him, I'm all good with. The last thing I want to bring up with you before we jump out of here, the schedule comes out. I got a gripe with the way that the Flyers are opening the season. They're going to open the season on the West Coast with 4 straight West Coast games.
Oh.
So what? What? Like you're talking about you're going to open up the game, or you're going to open up the season on October 11th in Vancouver, and then you're going to stay out there and play Calgary, Edmonton, and then Seattle.
Yeah.
I didn't think I was going to have to stay up late.
Oh, man.
But come on.
Yeah.
Really?
You know what the thing is?
I know someone's got to play there, but can we not have 2 West Coast teams play so that they're all in the same time zone? But the fact that we got to start the season on a West Coast swing.
Here, my thing is we were talking. We started the show with the Michkov stuff, and it's this is a, really loyal, passionate fan base. The Flyers are ingrained in the Philly sports culture, and the league knows that this is a original expansion team and stuff. And they have a player like Michkov coming, and you would think you would have that opened up, like ready to go. Like, why? He was in the Bedard draft, like the Connor Bedard draft, right? And a lot of people thought that Michkov was like talent wise on the level of Bedard. Like, why aren't the Flyers opening like prime time with the Blackhawks, Bedard versus Michkov?
Like,
even if it's on the road and it's in Chicago, you get like that prime time 8:00 start time. Like, what are they
let's
doing?
be honest, Mark. You and I are sitting in our spare bedrooms coming up with these ideas.
Yeah.
Like, there are not people that are in the upper echelon of the NHL going, okay, we got to make this happen. We got to have them open in Chicago on opening night.
Right.
Like, these two were tied together to like we're what, like, how are there not people that are conjuring up, no, here's what we're going to do. We've got this really, really potential top 5 level player. No, we're going to send his team out to the West Coast for 4 straight games to open the season. And they're not going to come back and play a home game until October 19th.
Yeah. I don't get it.
The fact that 5 of your first 7 games are away is also like no, come on, NHL, be better.
Yeah.
Just be better. Come on, Mark. Anything we missed on the way out the door?
No, I think we touched on everything. I don't expect. I know Book should mention like the Flyers being tapped out financially on the chat thing there. Like, I don't know that they'll be very active for the rest of the summer. It doesn't sound like there's going to be a lot of movement there. The Flyers have a lot of like dead money tied on their books right now from buyouts and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a significant portion of cap space I think opens up next year. So I think that's kind of, maybe when they start kind of dipping in and kind of maneuvering some things around. And I don't – it takes time. It takes time to build a competitor. And I think they're dropping Michkov in this year. Let him get acclimated. Let him get his feet wet with the group that they currently have. And then, they'll start to kind of mold the rest of the roster, hopefully next summer. So
that's the plan, man.
That's the plan.
That's the plan. Listen, we got about 15 minutes. I'll be back on with Eric to talk all things Phillies.
Oh man, you're killing it today.
Listen, Mark. It's a busy week. We got I got some. I'm having hernia surgery on Tuesday, so I'm
good luck with that.
Trying to get stuff in before then.
Yeah.
Got a vacation next weekend. We're going up to a friend's lake place. So
nice.
Listen. You got to get it where you fit in, and just you make it work, and we'll publish them later. But it's been fun talking all things Flyers. We'll have a couple more episodes later on the summer when other news drops. But on the way out, go Flyers.
Go Flyers. Peace.